The ship was dying. Captain Daniel Mercer knew this with the cold certainty that comes to all men who have spent their lives among the stars. He stood on the bridge of the horizon's edge and watched the warning lights flash red across every console. The main reactor had failed 3 hours ago. The backup systems were failing now. In the black void between stars, 4,000 souls drifted toward a slow and certain death. Daniel was 47 years old. He had gray at his temples and lines around his eyes from squinting at distant suns. He had promised these people a new home. He had promised them a future on a world called New Eden, where their children would run through green fields under an alien sky. Now he would lead them to their graves in the endless dark. The colony ship had left Earth 18 months ago. It carried farmers and teachers, engineers and doctors, families with small children and elderly couples seeking one last adventure. They had trusted Daniel with their lives. He had failed them. "Captain," said his first officer, a young woman named Sandra Cole. Her voice was steady, but Daniel could see the fear in her eyes. "Life support will fail in approximately 6 hours. The distress beacon is active, but we are too far from any human settlement. No one will reach us in time." Daniel nodded slowly. He had already done the math. The nearest human outpost was 3 weeks away at maximum speed. Help would arrive to find a frozen tomb drifting through space. "Wake everyone," Daniel said quietly. "Let them spend their final hours with their families. No one should die alone in a sleeping pod." Sandra hesitated. "Sir, if we wake them all, they will panic. 4,000 people facing death with nowhere to run." "They deserve to know," Daniel replied. "They deserve the chance to say goodbye to the people they love. That is all I can give them now." The next hours were the hardest of Daniel's life. He walked through the ship as families gathered in the common areas. He saw parents holding their children close. He saw old friends sharing memories and laughter even as tears ran down their faces. He saw courage and fear and love, all mixed together in those cramped metal corridors. A little girl, no more than 5 years old, tugged at his sleeve as he passed. "Captain," she said, looking up at him with wide eyes, "are we going to be okay?" Daniel knelt down to meet her gaze. He wanted to lie. He wanted to tell her that everything would be fine, that help was coming, that she would grow up to see New Eden. But he had never lied to his passengers, and he would not start now. "I do not know," he said softly, "but I promise you this. I will do everything I can to keep you safe. And whatever happens, you are not alone. We are all together." The girl nodded solemnly and ran back to her mother. Daniel watched her go and felt his heart break. It was Sandra who first saw the lights. "Captain," she called from the bridge, her voice strange and tight. "There is something out there. Multiple contacts, approaching fast." Daniel rushed to her side. On the scanner screen, he saw shapes moving through the void. Ships, dozens of them. They were unlike anything in the human database. Their design was elegant and flowing, like frozen music given form. They moved with a grace that human vessels could never match. "Unknown configuration," Sandra said. "They are not human. They are not any species we have encountered." Daniel felt a chill run down his spine. Humanity had only been exploring space for a few decades. They had found empty worlds and ancient ruins, but never living aliens. Now, at the moment of their greatest weakness, first contact had found them. "Are they hostile?" he asked. "Unknown. They are hailing us." Daniel straightened his uniform. Whatever was about to happen, he would face it as a captain should. "Open the channel." The view screen flickered to life, and Daniel saw them for the first time. The beings on the other side were tall and slender, with skin that seemed to glow with soft inner light. Their eyes were large and dark and filled with something that looked almost like concern. They moved with slow grace, and when they spoke, their voices were like gentle bells. "Travelers," the lead being said, "we have heard your cry for help. We see that your vessel is damaged and your people are in danger. We are the Volanti. We have come to offer aid." Daniel stared at the screen. His mind raced through every possibility. This could be a trap. These aliens could be predators, luring in weak prey with false kindness. Every survival instinct told him to be suspicious. But what choice did he have? "We accept your help," Daniel said. "With gratitude. Our reactor has failed. We have only hours of life support remaining. 4,000 people, including many children." The Volanti elder nodded slowly. "We understand. Our ships will surround your vessel and extend our own life support systems to yours. We will tow you to a nearby world where repairs can be made. Do not be afraid. You are safe now." True to their word, the Volanti ships moved into position around the horizon's edge. Soft beams of energy connected the vessels. And suddenly, the failing lights on the bridge grew steady and strong. Fresh air flowed through the corridors. The cold that had begun to creep through the ship retreated. Daniel watched in amazement as his dying ship came back to life. Over the following weeks, the Volanti towed the horizon's edge to a small habitable moon. They provided materials and expertise to repair the damaged reactor. They fed the colonists with strange but nourishing food. They played with the children and sat with the elderly, and never once asked for anything in return. Daniel spent many hours speaking with the Volanti elder, whose name was something his human tongue could not quite pronounce. He called her Mother Light, and she accepted the name with gentle amusement. Why? Daniel asked her one evening as they watched the twin suns set over the alien landscape. "Why did you help us? You did not know us. We have nothing to offer you. We could have been dangerous." Mother Light turned her glowing eyes toward him. "You were in pain," she said simply. "You were lost and afraid and dying. What other reason could there be to help? The universe is vast and cold, Captain. Kindness is the only light that makes it bearable. But surely you expect something in return. Payment? Alliance? Something." The Volanti elder made a sound that might have been laughter. "We expect nothing. Kindness given with expectation of reward is not kindness at all. It is merely trade. We helped you because helping is what good beings do. Perhaps one day you will find someone who needs help, and you will remember this moment. That is enough for us." Daniel felt tears prick in his eyes. In all his years, he had never encountered such pure generosity. He made a silent promise then, a promise he would carry for the rest of his life and pass down to his children and his children's children. When the horizon's edge finally departed for New Eden, the Volanti gave Daniel a gift. It was a small crystal that glowed with soft light, warm to the touch and beautiful beyond words. "Remember us," Mother Light said. "Remember that you are not alone in the dark. And if ever the chance comes to pass this gift along, take it. The universe needs more kindness." Daniel held the crystal close to his heart. "I will remember," he said. "Humanity will remember. I swear it." 300 years later, Admiral Lisa Calloway held that same crystal in her hand. It had been passed down through generations of her family, from Daniel Mercer himself. Every human child knew the story. Every human captain carried a copy of the crystal as a reminder. Now, Lisa stood on the bridge of the carrier at eternal vigil and read the distress signal that had just arrived from Volanti space. The Dominion of Kroth had declared war on the peaceful beings who had saved humanity so long ago. 10,000 warships were descending on the Volanti homeworld. Lisa's jaw tightened. She thought of Mother Light's gentle words. She thought of her ancestors' promise. She thought of the kindness that had been shown to her people when they were weak and helpless and alone. "Lieutenant," she said, her voice cold and hard as steel. "Open a channel to Earth Command. Priority Alpha. Tell them to mobilize everything. Every ship. Every soldier. Every weapon we have." The lieutenant hesitated. "Admiral, the Volanthi are not part of our alliance. We have no treaty obligation to defend them." Lisa turned to face him, and her eyes burned with a fire that made him step backward. "They saved us," she said. "They asked for nothing. They gave us everything. Now it is our turn." She looked out at the stars and made a promise to the ghosts of the past. "We remember, and we are coming." The Galactic Assembly met on a station that floated at the center of known space. It was a massive structure, built over thousands of years by 100 different species. Here, the great powers of the galaxy gathered to discuss trade and treaties, wars and peace. Here, the fate of civilizations was decided. Ambassador Kevin Drake walked through the vast corridors with his hands clasped behind his back. He was a tall man with dark skin and tired eyes. He had served humanity in the Assembly for 20 years, and he had learned that the galaxy was not kind. It was a place where the strong took what they wanted, and the weak suffered in silence. Today, the Assembly had been called to discuss the Krath invasion of Volanthi space. Kevin knew what would happen. He had seen it before. The delegates would offer words of sympathy. They would condemn the violence in the strongest possible terms. And then they would do nothing, because the Krath were powerful and the Volanthi were not. The great chamber was already full when Kevin arrived. Beings of every shape and size filled the seats that rose in tiers around the central platform. There were the insectoid Rethics with their clicking mandibles and cold compound eyes. There were the massive Gravani, each one the size of a small vehicle, their rock-like bodies rumbling when they spoke. There were the ethereal Winzingers, who existed as clouds of glowing gas and communicated through musical tones. And there, in the section reserved for the Dominion of Krath, sat the enemy. The Krath were warriors. They had been warriors for as long as anyone could remember. Their empire had grown through conquest and blood, swallowing smaller species and bending them to their will. They were tall and broad, covered in thick scales of dark green. Their eyes were yellow and slitted like a snake's, and when they smiled, they showed rows of sharp teeth. High Warlord Vorath led the Krath delegation. He sat in his chair like a king on a throne, looking down at the other species with open contempt. He feared nothing in this room. His fleet was the largest in the galaxy. His armies were the most brutal. No one would dare oppose him. The Speaker of the Assembly, an ancient being of a species so old that no one remembered their original name, called the session to order. "We gathered today to discuss the conflict in Volanthi space," the Speaker said, its voice echoing through the chamber. "The Dominion of Krath has declared war upon the Volanthi people. We've received reports of attacks on civilian vessels and bombardment of population centers. The Assembly calls upon the Krath delegation to explain their actions." Vorath rose slowly, his movements deliberate and threatening. "There is nothing to explain," he said. "The Volanthi are weak. They occupy space that we require for expansion. They have no means to defend themselves. Nature favors the strong, and we are strong. This is the way of the universe." Murmurs rippled through the chamber, but no one spoke against him. Kevin watched the other delegations and saw fear in their eyes. The Krath had crushed opposition before. No one wanted to be next. The Speaker nodded gravely. "The Assembly recognizes the concerns of the Krath Dominion. We call upon other delegations to offer their perspectives." One by one, the other species rose to speak. The Rethics expressed regret, but noted that the Volanthi were far from their borders. The Govani suggested mediation, knowing full well that the Krath would never accept. The Winzingers sang a mournful tune about the tragedy of violence, but offered no concrete help. Kevin listened and felt his anger grow. 300 years ago, when humanity was dying in the void, the Volanti had not asked if helping was convenient. They had not calculated the cost or weighed the risks. They had simply acted because it was the right thing to do. Now those same beings faced destruction, and the galaxy offered nothing but empty words. When his turn came, Kevin rose from his seat. He was aware of every eye in the chamber turning toward him. Humanity was still considered a young species, aggressive and unpredictable. Many of the older races viewed them with suspicion. Some viewed them with fear. Today, Kevin would give them reason for that fear. 300 years ago, he began, his voice quiet but clear. A human colony ship called the Horizon's Edge suffered a catastrophic failure in deep space. 4,000 people, including hundreds of children, faced certain death. No one was coming to save them. They had accepted their fate. He paused, letting the words hang in the air. Then the Volanti found them. A species they had never met. A species they owed nothing to. A species that could offer them nothing in return. The Volanti could have passed by. They could have ignored the distress signal and continued on their way. No one would have blamed them. No one would have known. Kevin's voice grew stronger. But they did not pass by. They stopped. They helped. They saved 4,000 human lives, and they asked for nothing in return. When our captain asked why they had done it, their elder said something that we have never forgotten. She said, "Kindness is the only light that makes the universe bearable." He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of every delegate he could. Humanity remembers our debts. We remember kindness. And we remember those who showed us mercy when we had nothing to offer but our gratitude. Kevin straightened his shoulders. My government has issued the following declaration. Any attack on the Volanti people will be considered an act of war against Earth and all human colonies. We are mobilizing our entire military force. Every warship, every fighter, every soldier who can hold a weapon. We are recalling all reserves and activating emergency production protocols. The chamber erupted in shocked murmurs. Kevin raised his voice above the noise. This is not a negotiation. This is not a threat. This is a promise. The Volanti saved us when we were weak. Now we will stand beside them, whatever the cost. Vorath rose from his seat, his yellow eyes narrowing with anger. You would go to war for them? He demanded. A species you share no border with? No trade agreements? No strategic alliance? This is madness. Kevin smiled, but there was no warmth in it. You call it madness. We call it honor. We call it loyalty. We call it being human. You cannot defeat us, Lorith growled. The Dominion has 10,000 warships. Your entire fleet numbers less than half that. You will be destroyed. Kevin's smile widened. Then we will be destroyed doing the right thing. But I promise you this, Warlord. Before we fall, we will hurt you. We will hurt you in ways you cannot imagine. And the galaxy will remember that when humanity was asked to abandon those who showed them kindness, we chose to fight instead. He turned to address the entire chamber one final time. To every species here today, I say this. Watch what happens next. Watch how humanity repays its debts. And ask yourself, what would you do if humanity remembered a kindness you had shown them? What would you do if humanity remembered a wrong? Kevin sat down. The chamber fell silent. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, slowly, the delegates began to leave. The session was over. Nothing had been decided. Nothing had been resolved. But something had changed. A small, young species had looked at the mightiest empire in the galaxy and said, "We are not afraid of you." Across human space, the call went out. It spread through colonies and outposts, through space stations and mining platforms. It reached every human being, no matter how far from Earth they had traveled. The message was simple. The Volanti need us. Come home. And humanity answered. Ships that had been exploring distant nebulae turned their bows toward Volanti space. Cargo vessels dumped their loads and converted their holds into troop transports. Retired veterans, men and women who had hung up their uniforms decades ago, reported to recruitment centers. Factory workers abandoned their civilian jobs and walked into weapons plants, ready to work double shifts until the war was won, on Earth. The great shipyards that had been idle for a generation roared back to life. Emergency protocols that had not been used in centuries were activated. The entire economy shifted onto a war footing in a matter of days. Admiral Lisa Calloway watched the reports come in from her command center on the Eternal Vigil. Ships were arriving every hour, joining her growing fleet. Some were sleek modern warships, bristling with weapons. Others were older vessels, pulled from museums and crewed by gray-haired volunteers who remembered how to fight. Her communications officer approached with a datapad. Admiral, we have received confirmation from Earth Command. Full mobilization is complete. 8,000 combat-capable vessels are en route to your position. Additional support ships are following. Lisa nodded. It was not enough. The craft still outnumbered them, but it was everything humanity had. Time until the fleet is assembled? She asked. 48 hours, Admiral. Lisa looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Volanti were dying. Somewhere out there, the beings who had saved her ancestors were facing extinction because they had dared to be kind. Not fast enough, she said quietly. But it will have to do. She touched the crystal that hung around her neck, the same crystal that Daniel Mercer had carried 300 years ago. Hold on, she whispered to the distant Volanti. We are coming. Humanity pays its debts. Commander Nathan Price had served in the human fleet for 15 years. He had fought pirates in the outer colonies. He had escorted refugee ships through contested space. He had seen combat and death, and the worst that the galaxy had to offer. But nothing had prepared him for what he saw when his destroyer, the Relentless, dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Volanti space. The Krath fleet was everywhere. 10,000 warships hung in the void like a swarm of angry insects. They surrounded the Volanti homeworld in a sphere of metal and weapons. Smaller vessels darted between the larger ones, hunting down any ship that tried to escape. In the distance, Nathan could see the flashes of orbital bombardment, bright enough to light up the darkness of space. Dear God, whispered Lieutenant Maria Santos, his sensor officer. Her hands trembled as they moved across her console. Commander, the Krath have begun targeting population centers. Estimated casualties are already in the millions. Nathan felt his stomach turn to ice. The Volanti were not warriors. They had never built weapons of war. They had no defenses, no military training, no way to fight back. They were being slaughtered like animals. How long until Admiral Calloway arrives with the main fleet? He asked. Maria checked her screens. 4 hours, Commander. Maybe more. 4 hours. Nathan looked at the tactical display and did the math in his head. At the current rate of bombardment, the Krath would kill hundreds of millions of Volanti in 4 hours. By the time help arrived, there might be nothing left to save. He turned to face his crew. The bridge of the Relentless was small, staffed by only a dozen officers. They were good people, loyal people, people with families waiting for them back home. I need to tell you something, Nathan said quietly. We cannot wait for the main fleet. If we do nothing, the Volanti will be dead before help arrives. He gestured at the tactical display. where his small squadron of 12 destroyers was marked by tiny blue dots against a sea of red. There are 12 of us. There are 10,000 of them. If we attack, we will not survive. I cannot order you to do this, but I can ask." The bridge fell silent. Nathan watched his crew and saw fear in their eyes. He saw doubt. He saw the desperate hope that someone else would make this decision for them. Then, Lieutenant Maria Santos stood up from her station. She was 26 years old, with dark hair pulled back in a regulation bun, and eyes that had seen too much for someone so young. "My grandmother used to tell me the story of the horizon's edge," Maria said. "Every night before bed, she would remind me that we are alive because strangers chose to be kind. She made me promise that if I ever had the chance to repay that kindness, I would take it." She met Nathan's eyes. "I keep my promises, Commander." One by one, the other officers stood. Engineering Chief Thomas Brooks, a burly man with scarred hands and a gentle heart. Navigation Officer Peter Wong, who had joined the fleet to see the stars and found a family instead. Weapons Officer Carmen Reyes, whose aim was the best in the squadron and whose laugh could fill a room. Every single one of them stood. Nathan felt pride swell in his chest. Pride and sorrow mixed together until he could not tell them apart. "Open a channel to the squadron," he said. His voice echoed across all 12 ships, reaching every man and woman under his command. "This is Commander Price. I'm not going to lie to you. What I am about to ask will probably kill us all. The Krath outnumber us by merely 1,000 to 1. We have no chance of victory. No chance of survival. All we can do is buy time." He took a deep breath. "But time is what the Volanti need. Every minute we fight is another minute they survive. Every ship we destroy is one less ship raining death on innocent people. We cannot win this battle, but we can make our deaths mean something." He thought of his parents back on Earth. He thought of his sister and her children. He thought of all the things he would never see, all the moments he would never have. 300 years ago, the Volanti saved our ancestors. They asked for nothing. They expected nothing. They just helped, because helping is what good beings do. Today, we have the chance to show them that their kindness was not wasted. We have the chance to prove that humanity remembers. His voice hardened with resolve. "All ships, follow me. We are going in." The 12 human destroyers accelerated toward the Krath fleet like arrows fired into a hurricane. They were small and fast, designed for raids and escort duty, not fleet battles. Against the massive Krath warships, they should have been destroyed in seconds, but humans had always been good at defying expectations. Nathan had studied Krath tactics for years. He knew their strengths: overwhelming firepower, rigid discipline, numerical superiority. He also knew their weaknesses: overconfidence, slow reaction time, a belief that smaller enemies were not worth worrying about. "All ships, scatter pattern Delta," he ordered. "Hit them from 12 different directions. Make them chase us. Make them confused." The destroyers split apart, each one finding a different path through the enemy formation. They were gnats attacking elephants, wasps stinging a sleeping giant. The Krath ignored them at first, too focused on their bombardment to notice the tiny ships darting between their hulls. That was a mistake. The Relentless found its first target, a Krath supply ship carrying fuel for the fleet. Nathan gave the order, and his weapons tore through the undefended vessel. The explosion was massive, engulfing 3 nearby warships in a bowl of fire. "Target destroyed," Carmen Reyes shouted, moving to secondary target. All across the battlefield, the human destroyers struck. They hit ammunition stores and sensor arrays, engine ports and communication nodes. They aimed for the weak points that larger ships were built to protect, exploiting every gap in the Krath formation. The Krath finally noticed. Hundreds of warships peeled away from the bombardment formation and turned to hunt the attackers. Weapons fire filled the void, beams of energy and salvos of missiles seeking the tiny human ships. The destroyer Swift Justice was the first to fall. Nathan watched on his tactical display as captain. Carolyn Webb led her ship in a desperate run against a craft command cruiser. She managed to destroy the cruiser's bridge before her ship was torn apart by return fire. "Swift Justice is gone," Maria reported, her voice tight with grief. "No survivors." "She took 3 of them with her," Nathan said quietly. "Remember that. Remember all of them." The battle stretched on. 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. The human destroyers fell one by one, but each one took craft ships with them. Captain Marcus Green of the Iron Thunder rammed his crippled vessel into a craft carrier, destroying it completely. Lieutenant Amy Chun of the Northern Star stayed at her post while her ship burned around her, providing targeting data for the other vessels until the very end. By the time 4 hours had passed, only the Relentless remained. Nathan's ship was dying. Half his crew was dead. The engines were failing. The weapons were nearly exhausted. Warning lights flashed across every console, painting the bridge in shades of red. But they had done it. The craft bombardment had stopped. The enemy fleet was in disarray. Ships scattered across the system as they hunted the ghosts of 12 destroyers. Over 300 craft vessels had been destroyed or disabled. And in the distance, Nathan saw something that made him smile. "Commander," Maria gasped from her station. She was bleeding from a wound on her forehead, but her eyes were bright with hope. "Long-range sensors are picking up multiple contacts. Thousands of them. It is the main fleet. Admiral Calloway has arrived." Nathan leaned back in his chair and let out a long breath. They had done it. They had bought enough time. "Open a channel," he said. "All frequencies." His voice, tired and broken, echoed across the void. "This is Commander Nathan Price of the USS Relentless to all Volante receivers. Help has arrived. Admiral Calloway and the human fleet are here. You are going to be okay. Do you understand? You are going to be okay." He paused, struggling to find the words. "Tell your children about today. Tell them that humanity remembers. Tell them that the debt is repaid." A craft warship loomed in front of the Relentless, weapons charging for a final shot. Nathan did not try to evade. There was no point. His ship was finished. Instead, he aimed his dying vessel at the enemy and pushed the engines to full power. "It has been an honor," he said to his remaining crew. "All of you. Every single one of you." The Relentless struck the craft warship head-on. Both vessels disappeared in a flash of light so bright that it could be seen from the surface of the Volante. Homeworld. When Admiral Calloway arrived minutes later, she found the wreckage of 12 destroyers surrounded by the burning hulks of over 300 enemy ships. She ordered her communications officer to record the scene and transmit it back to Earth. Then she gave the order to attack. "For the Relentless," she said, her voice cold with fury. "For every soul who gave their lives today. Show these monsters what humanity does to those who threaten our friends." 8,000 human ships surged forward, and the real battle began. Admiral Lisa Calloway stood on the bridge of the Eternal Vigil and watched the chaos unfold before her. The wreckage of Commander Price's squadron drifted in the void, surrounded by the shattered remains of over 300 craft warships. 12 ships against thousands, and they had fought for nearly 4 hours without breaking. Lisa felt tears prick at her eyes. She had known Nathan Price. She had served with him when they were both young lieutenants, full of dreams and ambition. Now he was gone, along with every man and woman who had followed him into that impossible fight. "All ships, this is Admiral Calloway," she said, her voice ringing across the fleet. The crew of the Relentless and her sister ships gave everything they had so we could arrive in time. Do not let their sacrifice be wasted. Today, we show the Krath what humanity does to those who attack our friends. 8,000 human ships answered her call. They poured out a faster-than-light travel in waves, filling the void with metal and fire. Carriers launched fighters by the hundreds. Destroyers formed screening formations around the larger vessels. Battleships powered up their main guns, weapons capable of cracking planets in half. The Krath fleet was still in disarray from the destruction caused by Price's squadron. Their formation had been broken, their command structure disrupted. But they still outnumbered the humans, and High Warlord Vorath was not a leader who accepted defeat easily. Human ships. Vorath's voice crackled across every communication channel. Turn back now, and we may show mercy. Continue this foolishness, and we will destroy you along with your precious Volanthi. This is not your war. Do not make it your grave. Lisa smiled coldly. Warlord Vorath. My name is Admiral Lisa Calloway. I am the great-granddaughter of Captain Daniel Mercer, the man your victims saved 300 years ago. I carry the crystal they gave him as a reminder of their kindness. She touched the warm crystal at her neck. Today I return that kindness. Today you learn what happens when you threaten those humanity loves. Today the debt is repaid in full. She cut the channel and turned to her tactical officer. Launch all fighters. All ships advance. Maximum attack speed. The battle that followed would be studied in war academies across the galaxy for thousands of years. Military scholars would call it the greatest example of determined assault against superior numbers ever recorded. Poets would write songs about the courage of the human fleet. And for generations afterward, young officers would be taught that victory comes not from numbers alone, but from the willingness to fight for something greater than survival. The humans attacked with a fury that shocked the Krath. Where other species fought with caution and calculation, humans threw themselves at the enemy with reckless abandon. They did not retreat when damaged. They did not surrender when surrounded. They fought as if death meant nothing, as if the only thing that mattered was taking one more enemy with them. Lieutenant Megan Solis flew her fighter through a wall of defensive fire to reach a Krath command ship. Her wingmen were all dead. Her own fighter was burning around her, but she could see the enemy bridge through the smoke, and she knew what she had to do. For the relentless, she whispered, and crashed her ship into the command center. The explosion killed Megan instantly. It also killed the Krath commander controlling an entire sector of their fleet. Without leadership, those ships fell into confusion and were torn apart by human attackers. Captain Derek Hawley commanded the frigate Starbound. When his engines were destroyed by enemy fire, he found himself drifting helplessly toward the Krath line. Most captains would have ordered their crew to abandon ship. Derek saw something else, a Volanthi refugee transport fleeing the battle zone with a Krath carrier moving to intercept. All hands, this is the captain, Derek said calmly. Divert all remaining power to maneuvering thrusters and weapons. We are going to protect that transport. His crew did not hesitate. The crippled Starbound turned toward the Krath carrier and opened fire. The attack was hopeless, the damage minimal. But it got the carrier's attention. The Krath ship turned away from the refugee transport and focused on the Starbound. Derek watched the enemy weapons charge and knew he had only seconds left. It was worth it, he said quietly. The Starbound was destroyed, but the Volanthi transport escaped. 3,000 civilians, including hundreds of children, survived because one human captain decided their lives were worth more than his own. Sergeant Amanda Torres led the assault team aboard the Krath battleship Devastator. Her mission was impossible: capture an enemy vessel from the inside while it was still fighting. Most commanders would never have attempted it. Amanda was not most commanders. Her team of 50 Marines cut through the outer hull and fought their way toward the bridge. The Krath were larger and stronger than humans, but Amanda's team was better trained and far more desperate. They moved through the corridors like ghosts, killing silently and quickly. By the time Amanda reached the bridge, she had lost 30 of her 50 soldiers. The remaining 20 faced 100 Krath warriors guarding their command staff. Options? Asked Corporal Jake Martinez, blood running down his face from a wound on his scalp. Amanda checked her ammunition. She had 1 magazine left, 1 grenade, 1 knife. "We take the bridge or we die trying," she said. There is no third option. They attacked with a ferocity that the Krath could not match. Amanda killed 7 enemies with her rifle before it ran dry. She killed 3 more with her grenade. She killed 2 more with her knife before finally falling, pierced by a dozen Krath blades. But Jake Martinez and 4 other Marines survived long enough to reach the main controls. They turned the Devastator's weapons on its own fleet and opened fire, destroying 6 Krath ships before the vessel was finally retaken. Amanda Torres died with her knife in her hand and a smile on her lips, across the battlefield. Such stories repeated themselves 1,000 times. Human ships that should have retreated instead charged forward. Human soldiers that should have surrendered instead fought to the last breath. Human pilots that should have ejected instead used their dying ships as weapons. The Krath had never faced an enemy like this. They were warriors, bred for conquest, confident in their superiority. They expected humans to calculate losses, to retreat when the cost grew too high. Instead, humans fought harder for every ship they lost. Every death was answered with a battle cry. High Warlord Vorath watched his tactical display with growing horror. His fleet was being destroyed, not by superior firepower or clever tactics, but by an enemy that simply refused to stop fighting. For every human ship the Krath destroyed, 2 more appeared to take its place. For every human soldier they killed, 10 more rose up in fury. "This is madness," Vorath muttered. "They cannot win. They must know they cannot win." His aide, a young officer named Korath, answered quietly. "Perhaps winning is not their goal, Warlord. Perhaps they simply want to hurt us, to make us pay so dearly for our conquest that we never forget the cost." Vorath turned to face his aide. "No species is that determined. No species values anything above survival. Humans do," Korath said. "They value loyalty. They value honor. They value repaying their debts." He paused. "The Volanti saved them 3 centuries ago. They are here to return that favor, whatever the cost." The battle raged for 12 hours. By the end, the Krath fleet was shattered. Over 6,000 of their warships had been destroyed. High Warlord Vorath's flagship, the Dominator, drifted dead in space. Its bridge destroyed by a suicide, run from a human corvette captain who had refused to surrender. The surviving Krath vessels fled into the void, their engines burning hot as they ran from the humans who had broken them. Admiral Calloway watched them go. Her own fleet had suffered terrible losses. Over 3,000 ships destroyed, tens of thousands of lives lost. But they had won. She opened a channel to all remaining ships. "This is Admiral Calloway. The Krath fleet has been defeated. The Volanti homeworld is secure." She paused, looking out at the wreckage that filled the void. So many ships, so many lives, so much sacrifice. What we did today will be remembered forever. We came here to repay a debt 300 years old. We came here to show the galaxy that humanity never forgets its friends. We came here to prove that kindness is never wasted. Her voice softened. "To all who fell today, you are heroes. Every single one of you. And humanity will carry your names in our hearts until the stars grow cold." The fleet began the slow work of rescue and recovery. Damaged ships were towed to safety. Survivors were pulled from wreckage. The dead were counted and honored. And on the surface of the Volanthi homeworld, millions of luminescent beings looked up at the sky and wept with gratitude. The strange, aggressive species they had saved so long ago had kept its promise. Humanity remembered. And humanity had come. The shuttle descended through the atmosphere of the Volanthi homeworld, carrying Admiral Lisa Calloway and a small honor guard. Through the viewport, Lisa could see the scars left by the Krath bombardment. Cities lay in ruins. Forests had been burned to ash. Millions had died before the human fleet arrived, but millions more had survived. And that was what mattered. The shuttle landed on a platform outside the central gathering place, a beautiful structure of flowing crystal that had somehow survived the attack. Thousands of Volanthi had gathered there, their luminescent skin casting soft light across the courtyard. They watched in silence as Lisa walked down the ramp and stepped onto their world. The Volanthi elder waited at the center of the crowd. She was ancient beyond measure, her skin dimmed by age, her movements slow and careful. But her eyes were bright and clear, filled with the wisdom that came from centuries of life. Lisa had seen images of the Volanthi, but nothing had prepared her for the reality. They were beautiful in a way that human words could not capture. Their skin seemed to glow with inner light, shifting colors that reflected their emotions. They moved with a grace that made humans look clumsy by comparison. And they had saved humanity when no one else would. Lisa walked forward until she stood before the elder. She had practiced this moment 1,000 times in her mind. But now that it was here, she found herself struggling for words. "Elder," she said finally, her voice thick with emotion, "I am Admiral Lisa Calloway of the human fleet. I am the descendant of Captain Daniel Mercer, whom your people saved 300 years ago." The elder inclined her head. "We remember Daniel Mercer. He was a good man, honest and humble and grateful. We remember his promise that humanity would never forget." "We have not forgotten," Lisa said. "We could never forget." She reached up and removed the crystal from around her neck. It glowed softly in her hands, warm to the touch, exactly as it had been when Mother Light had given it to Daniel Mercer so long ago. "This crystal has been carried by my family for 300 years, Lisa said. "It has been our most precious treasure, a reminder of the kindness your people showed us. Daniel Mercer swore that one day humanity would repay that debt." She knelt before the elder, holding the crystal out in both hands. "Today, that debt is repaid. Not because we had to, not because we wanted anything in return, but because helping is what good beings do. Because the universe is vast and cold, and kindness is the only light that makes it bearable." The elder reached out and gently touched the crystal. For a long moment, she said nothing. When she finally spoke, her voice was filled with wonder. "You came for us," she said softly. "Across the vastness of space, you came. You fought against impossible odds. You sacrificed your sons and daughters. You did all of this for us, a species you owe nothing to." Lisa shook her head. "We owe you everything. We owe you our existence. 300 years ago, you showed us that the galaxy was not as cold and cruel as we feared. You showed us that kindness could exist between strangers. You gave us hope." She met the elder's eyes. "How could we not come? How could we abandon the people who taught us that the universe could be good?" The elder was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, she bent down and lifted Lisa to her feet. "You have repaid a debt we never asked for," the elder said. "You have sacrificed lives we never asked you to risk. And in doing so, you have given us something more precious than survival." She placed her hand over her heart. "You have given us hope as well. Hope that the galaxy is not as dark as we feared. Hope that kindness given is not kindness wasted. Hope that even in the coldest reaches of space, there are beings who remember what they owe." Lisa pressed the crystal into the elder's hands. Keep this. It belongs to your people now. Let it remind you that you are never alone. Wherever there are humans, you have friends. Wherever there are humans, you have allies. Wherever there are humans, you have family. The elder accepted the crystal with trembling hands. Around them, the gathered Volanti began to weep. Tears of light streaming down their glowing faces. In the weeks that followed, the story spread across the galaxy. Every species, every world, every corner of known space learned what humanity had done. They learned that the humans had gone to war for an ally they had no treaty with. They learned that humans had sacrificed thousands of lives for a debt 3 centuries old. They learned that humans had broken the mightiest empire in the galaxy to protect beings who had once shown them kindness. The response was not what anyone expected. Fear. In the halls of the Galactic Assembly, ambassadors spoke in hushed tones. The consortium of Rethics quietly cancelled its planned expansion into neutral territory where humans had friends. The Syndicate of Hollow Worlds hastily paid off ancient trade debts to human merchants, debts they had planned to ignore forever. A dozen petty empires sent gifts and apologies to Earth, hoping to earn favor or at least avoid becoming enemies. Ambassador Kevin Drake sat in the human section and watched the other delegations scurry about. He had expected gratitude, perhaps respect. He had not expected terror. A delegate from the Winzingers approached him, her gaseous form flickering nervously. "Ambassador Drake," she sang, her voice trembling with musical uncertainty. "I must ask you something. It has troubled my people since the battle." Kevin nodded. "Ask." "Your species went to war for the Volanti. You sacrificed ships and soldiers and resources for beings who could give you nothing in return. You did this because they helped you once, long ago." She paused. "What would you do if someone helped you again? If someone showed you kindness in your hour of need?" Kevin thought of the crystal. He thought of Daniel Mercer's promise. He thought of the burning wreckage that now orbited the Volanti homeworld, the graves of thousands who had died to repay a 300-year-old debt. "We would remember," he said quietly. "We would wait. And when the time came, we would move heaven and earth to repay it. That is our promise." The Winzinger shivered. "And if someone wronged you? If someone harmed those you consider friends?" Kevin's expression hardened. "Then we would remember that too. And we would wait. And when the time came, we would make them regret it." He stood and faced the chamber, raising his voice so all could hear. "Let the galaxy understand this. Humanity does not forget. We do not forget kindness, and we do not forget cruelty. Help us when we need it, and we will stand beside you until the stars burn out. Harm us or those we love, and we will hunt you across the universe until justice is done." His words echoed through the silent chamber. That is not a threat. It is simply who we are. The Krath survivors sent a single transmission to their remaining colonies. It was brief and stark. Do not provoke the humans. Do not harm their allies. Do not give them reason to remember us. On the Volanti homeworld, the elder stood before her people and spoke of what they had witnessed. She told them of the humans who had crossed the galaxy to fight for strangers. She told them of the ships that had thrown themselves against impossible odds. She told them of the young commander named Nathan Price, who had bought time with his life so that others might survive. "The universe is vast and cold," the elder said, her voice carrying across the crowd. "But today we have learned that it also contains warmth. Today we have learned that kindness is never wasted. Today we have learned that there are beings in this galaxy who remember what they owe." She held up the crystal that Lisa Calloway had given her. This crystal was given to a human captain 300 years ago. It represented our hope that the universe could be good. Today, it has been returned to us, carried across the stars by the descendants of that captain. And it represents something even more precious than hope. She smiled, and her smile was like sunrise. It represents proof. In the great darkness between stars, the galaxy fell silent. Not in despair, but in awe. Not in fear, but in wonder. Because now everyone knew the truth about humanity. They were not the most numerous species in the galaxy. They were not the oldest or the most advanced. Their ships were not the fastest. Their weapons not the most powerful. But they were the most loyal, the most determined, the most terrifyingly grateful. Kindness shown to humanity was never forgotten. Debts owed to humanity were always repaid. And those who earned humanity's love found themselves protected by the fiercest guardians the galaxy had ever known. The stars fell silent in dread, not because humanity was dangerous, but because humanity was good, and that, in a cold and uncaring universe, was the most terrifying thing of all.